It feels like morning, but it would be incorrect to say good morning to you. Good afternoon. Um, I see some faces that I know and other faces that I don't. So I try to know who the audience is. I assume we got a good number of people who have been in families where this kind of thing is what you face. Some of you are from the healthcare profession. I might be the only one who's a lawyer. If I'm not, that please get my back because I feel like I'm being attacked here. Because I'm coming at things, I can't say enough about what a wonderful first hour. Thank you very much for what you shared with us. He said one thing that was very arresting to me, and that was we warehouse them. And I feel like that could be a bit of an indictment because I'm going to talk to you about whether we're talking in memory care units, institutionalization in nursing home environments. I deal a lot with in-home care. I'll I'll give enough introduction by the time I get to the nuts and bolts of that you'll have a context for why I'm so passionate about that. Um, my firsthand experience was first with my own grandmother. While I was stationed in Hawaii in the military, we did have a parishioner who wandered off in Honolulu, and that was sort of as a 21-year-old waking up to somebody who's completely lost, no way to find themselves, find their way back. They were completely a victim of the chaos of a huge city, and we never did find her. And so that was really sort of a wake-up call for me. Later on, then, when my own grandmother did this, she was living alone in her own home at 101. I had grown up next to her. She was as close to me as my own mother, and so going to her house was always a joy. Even though she had macular degeneration, when she would welcome me, she would insist that she pour me a drink, but she couldn't see the glass. And we had a cane in every single room, but then she finally fell. She passed away 6 months later at 102. But to live independently at 101 was a real struggle in the family, where we tried to look at whether or not there would be a need for a care facility. Can we handle this at home? And those dynamics are very difficult for us to manage. And talking with you, Bob, about how, as the church, we have failed to really develop a theology for this. We always have shied away from caregiving. I think it's a very difficult. That's the role of the pastor. Not always. I'm talking to ourselves here, but this is a hard issue. We don't know what to do when things are not the way we expected them to be. This is very, very hard. So a little bit about myself, if you would. Let's go to the next slide. I am former Army. I was an air traffic controller about 5 years in, got out in order to go into ministry. I did full-time ministry. About half of my time over those 2 decades was second seat. So I did a lot of education, a lot of counseling, pastoral work, training, lots of funerals, lots of hospital visits. But then the other half was pulpit work. So it was not without lots of comments when I sold my soul to become a lawyer. They all like to make that point to me. But I knew that I did not want to leave what I had done and make a bridge so that I could help in a very, I don't want to say that other professions aren't practical, but this is something that most people don't know, that there is a legal side that will be a nightmare for us if we don't face it. So, next slide if you would. Oh, by the way, before we go to the next slide. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. These are a couple of, I have 6 historic homes in Richmond. Please come by, I'll show you any of them. But he dropped in the upper one yesterday to see, and it is a joy. My wife drugged me to Richmond. I did not want to go to Richmond. I've fallen in love with it, but I always said, if I can have one house, that's it. And God made that happen because they recruited me to purchase the home, and I told them I couldn't, but they worked it out. So next slide, if you would. I know I'm the beautiful one in the picture, but the brains surround me, so I have a large team of people. You will get to meet 2 of them if you're with me today, these ladies over here on the front second row. A lot of people behind the scenes work to help with what we do for folks. You may not even know what elder law is, so I call elder law estate planning on steroids. We all know that maybe you need a will, or a power of attorney. We know that we're going to have to go through probate when we do have a loved one pass away. But there are lots and lots of things that matter before death occurs. It's not just about being ready after we pass. It's about what do you do in all these circumstances as we are aging. So although I believe everyone needs a power of attorney and a will once they turn 18, because you have no legal authority just because you're married to someone or because they are your child. And if they have an automobile accident on a Friday night, you don't make any choices for the other person. The physician will listen compassionately, but legally, they are going to follow their best ideas and training and not the family's wishes. So if you want control, if you want to have a family involvement, you're going to have to do some legal work. So that's the sort of stuff we do. I do everything from veterans law, Medicaid planning, those things related to long-term care so that you don't end up going broke, because you will. And I'll talk about those statistics in just a moment. Next slide, if you would. Next slide, please. There you go. Thank you. So why this is important. We talked specifically about types of dementia. They may not be the only thing we're facing, but 7 out of 10 of us right here in this room are going to need long-term care before we pass away. 7 out of 10 is a pretty high number. And if you are married as I am, that statistic doesn't play very well, because 7 out of 10 means more likely than not, I'm going to need it. And she doesn't get to take my 30% and roll it into hers. She's just as likely to need it as well. So it could be both of us. And the fact that 52% of us, once we turn 65, are likely to face some sort of severe disability, whether that be cognitive or some other sort. These are huge, huge likelihoods that we're going to face these sorts of things. Next slide. When we do need long-term care, the average length of time we're needing that care is, it should say 3.5. 3.8 is the length of time if you're male. Women have a little bit less likely long stay. Theirs is around 3.2 years. So if you average those, around 3.5 is about right. Now that's not always in a facility. A lot of that's going to be at home, right? But we all have this idea that you will die sitting in your own bed like my mother did, sitting up, taking a break from where she was doing an oil painting repair for me. And as she went upstairs just to take a break, that was too much on her heart, and she passed away at a ripe old age of 69. So disability is not a discriminator of persons. It can hit at any age. I've seen some of the dementias hit early in their 50s. It is a scary proposition that something so life-altering can happen to any one of us, and we're facing a long row to hoe with these difficult healthcare situations. If you would, next slide. So the trouble with Alzheimer's is you can be very high functioning physically for a very long time. 7 to 10 years is a long time, and already I've talked to a couple of you that you've had about 7 years with a loved one, and it is, although it is a degenerative condition, it status quos and goes in stages, and so there is a constant changing and getting used to, and the grief cycle that you think you've worked through starts all over again when something new happens. So it's a very, very difficult thing. The problem with all of that is, from my perspective, because I want to stay at home and I want to take care of my mom or my dad or my grandmother, I end up waiting until I can no longer do it for myself, because they're pacing the floor 23 hours a day. They have no more bowel control, and I can't sleep, and I can't provide the kind of care and support that I need. I can't even lift my father. And by the time I get to that point, there are no facilities that are available to take them. And I need them to be with me, but I also need a break, because quality of life is something I'm trying to think about too. Sometimes I want to be able to visit and not be the one cleaning up the mess that's in the floor from last night. So these are difficult choices. Finding a memory care unit can be very difficult because now they have to be a secure unit, and the facilities don't want to be a place responsible for security. They're healthcare providers. They're not running a jail. And they're afraid of the combativeness. So my story here is just to say, let's be sensitive. I'll talk about it from another angle, but let's be sensitive about waiting too long. We need to find support and care and networks in home care, but don't be completely unaware that sooner or later institutional level care is often going to be required. Next slide, if you would. So I've got a lot of statistics here, and I think I might go past this because I want to get to some practical stuff. Dr. Mitchell talked about the current number of Alzheimer's, so that would be on the far right. But if you just fast forward 35 years, what does the number do? It doubles. Yeah, I'm not good at math, but I can tell that's kind of double. Yeah, that's a lot of change, a lot of growth in this. And it is specifically because, as we just went through, right, we're surviving longer, so we face the most difficult kinds of healthcare situations. Next slide, please. So you can see also as we age, that purple category there, age 85 and up. Guess what? If you're 65 years old or older, guess what your life expectancy is? If you're male, it's 87. If you're female, it's 89. Does it seem personal all of a sudden? You see, this is us. Any one of us could be facing these kinds of situations because we are living longer. Then these sorts of statistics start to be very pointed. If you would, next slide. This one breaks my heart. I'll tell you about one man who came to my office, and he'd been a very successful person. It seems as if he maybe worked with IBM and retired well. And he came to my office, and I was trying to figure out exactly what he was there for, because he had told me how he had outfitted his house perfectly. He had the lifts that he needed in his home, all of the ramps, and had been taking care of his wife for about 5 years. Okay, so what can I do for you? I want you to help me find a facility where I can take her, and I'm going to put her there, and I'm going to walk away. I have cared for her. I've lost every bit of money I had, and I see what happens when I place her in facilities. Every time I put her there, she goes downhill, but I cannot do it myself anymore. So I know that when I make this choice, it is her demise, and I can't watch that. So I want you to find a place for me, and I'm going to leave her to never return. I didn't know what to do with that. Still pretty young in this career at that point, but it was tragic to see this man that served her, loved her so deeply. I say that because this statistic here, gentlemen, your wife is twice as likely to be the one struggling with the Alzheimer's as you are. It is a difficult thing to face some of this reality. Next slide. Coming back to something I said early on, I'm concerned about the caregivers, because we want to take care of each other. We want to take care of our spouses. We want to take care of our parents. But 60% of the time, the caregiver's health goes down more quickly than the person needing the care. I'll say that a little bit more clearly. It is more likely than not that as the caregiver, you're going to get sick quicker, because it is really, really hard. So I'm not saying abandon it. All I'm saying is let's get help and support for it, because we need to do this as a team so that we can have good experiences and not debilitating experiences as we love each other through things. Next slide. I think I want to move forward from these, so if you don't mind, let's just go back in my slide deck. Just go to the front picture and put the title up there. I'm going to skip some of the statistics. So as an attorney, what do I have to say that can be as helpful as what Dr. Mitchell said? The first thing I want to talk about is, what if you don't prepare? If you don't prepare for this at all, the cost of care, if it's needed, is currently in the state of Kentucky, an affordable state, $110,000 per year. If you need the 3.5 years, just do the math. We're talking about $400,000 for care. How much does the average couple, when they hit 65 years old, have in savings? $120,000. That's the average. Now, perhaps you're doing better than that. Perhaps you're thinking, goodness, I wish I had $120,000. But it just doesn't cover the bill, does it? Now, in-home care can be cheaper than that, but still is an astronomically high number. So we need to think about care. And I don't care about what this sounds like I'm arguing against. I'm not a disagreeable person, but you have been told things about the healthcare industry regarding long-term care and in-home care, and I promise you that most of it is incorrect. I only say it that sharply because there will be many of us that walk away and still won't just come to me and ask a question. Questions are free. Okay? Questions are free. But what I find is there are so many myths about this. Oh, I make too much to qualify for that. There is no one that makes too much to qualify for health care benefits. No one. But if you have any familiarity with this, you have heard somebody say somewhere, I make too much. And it is impossible to make too much. Unless you got so much that you don't need any help at all. So at $9,000 a month, if your income is $10,000 a month, yes, you make too much. But if you make short of that, there is no barrier. You can get assistance for the care. Veterans benefits, the same thing happens all the time. If you have a loved one who served in the military during any wartime period, there are benefits of nearly $3,000 a month that are available to them. The VA will tell you you don't qualify. You make too much to qualify. You do not make too much to qualify. You just have to go see an attorney to get the right structures in place, because it is an income shuffle to recategorize the way your money is arranged so that you can qualify the ways the government tells us to do it. Okay? So I want to first just talk about the cost. We're looking at about $350,000 to $400,000 for the average person. 7 out of 10 of us are going to face that. The other thing I want to talk about is the power of attorney again. I said we all need one, even at age 18. But if you don't have one, what do you face? You face guardianship court. Do you know what guardianship court is? It is where the government declares you to no longer be a person deserving of your individual rights. No right to drive, no right to vote, no right to this, that, or the other. And somebody else assumes for you the role of being a parent to you as if you were a child all over again. Now, I don't want to make that sound like a horrible thing, because it can be very important and necessary and a blessing. But if it doesn't have to happen, and it should only happen in one circumstance. But if it doesn't have to happen, I don't want it to happen, because it can be something that does strip you of your dignity. When we go through that process and people interview us and have to give testimony before a court and perhaps even in front of a jury to say, no, Scott is not capable of making choices for himself any longer. I don't want that to happen to us if we don't have to have that happen. And all it takes is a single thing called a power of attorney. Now, I'm talking to people who are fairly agreeable. You're probably not at all like my father, who is disagreeable, who says, I don't want nobody being in charge of me. That's silly. Nobody's in charge of you. but to have somebody who can help you and support you, that's really what a power of attorney is. No one can act against your best interest. Nobody can act against your exact expressed interest. They have to do what you want them to do. But without that, you don't have any other alternative other than guardianship court, where your rights are taken away and you become simply a ward of another person. The third thing I want to think about is just your will. Now, sometimes we think a will is a pretty obvious thing. Everybody's got one, right? But the fact of the matter is, only about 10% of the population even gets a will until they hit age 65. And after they turn 65, still the statistics are not very high. Only about 30% tend to have wills. How many of you have a will? See, preaching to the choir here. You've got a will, but I want to know, does it have anything in it that says, in the case that I pass, everything goes to my spouse in trust? It needs to say that, because there are tax provisions that the IRS says you can take advantage of, and any governmental benefit program has to honor that everything the spouse leaves to the surviving spouse is automatically excluded. So all of that stuff about, oh, you don't qualify because you've got too much, one phrase, to my wife in trust, means none of that's counted against you. But if you're going down the street to your general practice attorney that you've used for real estate transactions and for everything else that you've done in your life, they're not going to know to put that in there. There's also another provision that says that if I am leaving anything to one of my family members and they are disabled. Do you know that if you're disabled, anybody have a disabled person in their family that maybe a car accident, or perhaps they had some developmental or birth kind of situation, so they receive SSI. An SSI recipient makes less than $1,000 a month. If I pass away and give my money to my child who's an SSI recipient, guess what the government does? They take their SSI away, because they're only allowed to have $2,000 to their name and still receive that whopping $1,000 a month, which is not enough for rent and groceries, right? It's not enough. But $2,000 and everything that dad wanted to give to his child, they have to spin through it, burn through it, and then get back to broke again. And so the system is against them. You want to try to help them, put them in the will, but your will must say to them in trust, and if it will, then guess what? They can take anything. I want to see how astute you guys are. I'm a multi-millionaire. Do you believe me? Somebody say no. Don't believe me. Okay, please get me off the hook. But I leave these millions of dollars to my child. They can still keep their SSI, and they still can say, I want this to go on to my children. I want to help out the next generation, if you simply put the right things in your will. That's all my point is. So are you going to be able to get that at your general practice attorney that did your real estate transaction? And no, you're not going to do that. So please, I'm asking you to come and talk to somebody who specializes in this thing, because what you face once you hit 65 and older is not the same as what everybody else is facing. You need some special things in your will and your power of attorney. Okay. So let's talk more specifically about Medicaid benefits and nursing homes. The same rule about SSI applies to that sort of a situation. If you have anything more than $2,000 to your name, you can't get assistance for the nursing home bill that costs you $9,000 per month. Now there's a range there. Some facilities are still in the $7,000 range, but on average it's $9,250 across the state of Kentucky. So if I go and I need assistance to pay for that kind of bill, then the rule system says, but you can only have $2,000 in the bank. Now, the problem with that is that out of my income, I must contribute every penny of my income toward my own care. So let's say I'm making $2,500 in Social Security. All $2,500 has to go toward my own care, except for a thing called a personal needs allowance. That personal need could be that I still do like to shampoo. It's just kind of fun to play around up there, right? Or I need to shave, or perhaps maybe I need a pedicure because I've had a chronic ingrown toenail all of my life. Or maybe I have dentures, or I need my eyeglasses or my hearing aids replaced. Because the healthcare benefit does not pay for those things. So they give me $60 per month to pay for those personal needs. Ladies, would $60 take care of? No, it won't. I mean, maybe I just want a bottle of Coke a couple of 3 times a week. I wouldn't be able to afford that either, would I? So it is a lack of dignity, I think, when I don't have that sort of money. So what I want, anything more than $60. So what I want to do is ensure that I've got a cushion. Pre-planning is something that we all can do as part of getting a will in place. You prepare your estate just the same as you would retirement accounts and investment accounts or anything else. You want to do some planning. It's usually going to be trust-based planning so that you can make sure that you've got all of your needs taken care of and plenty of cushions. That is part of what elder law does for you. So now, if I use the word trust, people start to get a little antsy. I've heard people say all kinds of crazy things about trust. For instance, trust, those are for rich people, and I'm not one, right? It's kind of interesting to me that a rich person making more than $2,900 a month is required by the federal government to get a trust in order to get health care. So I don't know where you are. Maybe you're at $2,700 a month. Maybe you're at $2,900 a month. But at $2,900, you're going to be required to get a trust. So why not go ahead and get one that helps you and not just one that is an income divisor for you? So does anybody an expert on trust in here? Anybody intimidated by trust a little bit in here? So you hear all these kinds of, if you're a fan of Dave Ramsey, it might be a little bit older. You could have seen Susie Ormond on late night TV, and they always talk about these trusts. You hear about revocable living trusts. Those two people, real big fans of revocable living trusts. Guess what a revocable living trust will do for you in a healthcare context? Nothing. It doesn't do you any good at all. Now, they are great if you have more than $27 million and you're trying to save on taxes. They're great for that. They were created in the 80s as a way to save on taxes, where if your estate tax, what you were passing on was more than just a couple of $100,000. But now the rules have changed, and with President Trump's first time around, he doubled the numbers that we were already at. So now we're right at 27 million before you ever have to pay tax at all. So that's kind of a waste to even be concerned about that one. Unless you're just wanting to avoid probate, and that can be a legitimate goal. But for the most part, what we're talking about are irrevocable trusts. Now, let's have a grammar lesson. What does irrevocable mean? No, it doesn't. The only thing irrevocable means, and this is the only time I love being a lawyer at this moment, because what we all hate about lawyers is that what they say and mean are usually two different things. I have this incredible skill. I can talk out of both sides of my mouth at the same time. Right? That's what a lawyer does. So irrevocable doesn't mean that it can't be changed. All irrevocable means is that the money is controlled by a trustee instead of by the person that put the money in there. That's all it means. Now that is scary if you have a daughter like mine. But I've got another daughter that has the first penny she ever earned, right? And I trust her with anything. The other one, she has pockets with no bottoms in them, and it just slides right on out. So if I have a trusted family member, trusted friend, trusted church person, anyone could be my trustee that controls that money, and then I could have unlimited wealth, protected without governmental interference in it, and still be able to qualify for whatever assistance I need, regardless of the system. VA, Medicaid, anything else like that. There are no rules. Now, you got to go through a couple of steps, but I don't want anyone to misunderstand. Having a trust does not make you qualify. A trust does what a trust does, just like a treasure chest does what a treasure chest does. It holds treasure. Trusts hold things. You have to do other things to meet qualification standards, but the trust itself shouldn't scare you at all. It's just a necessary tool to help us protect so you have the cushion in place. So, I might need to ask permission for this. I know that we wanted to reserve some questions for the end, but I would really like just to talk with people. Okay? So I'm springing this on you, and I know you're going to try to think of the hardest question to stump the chump. So I'm going to give you a second to really work hard at that. What kind of questions? Everything from powers of attorney to anything. I'm happy to help.
Can you name multiple people on that trust, or is it just one person?
You could be asking two separate things, so I'll say multiple to both. So if by that you mean I want to have two trustees, you can have two trustees. You could have 5 trustees. Generally speaking, the more cooks in the kitchen, the more difficult it is. But sometimes I might have my most frugal child is in California, but I need some boots on the ground in Kentucky, right? So that's a good partnership. You can also limit them so that you can say, I want them to have to do everything jointly. So they both have to show up to sign a check or make a healthcare choice. And I say healthcare choice, that has nothing to do with the trust, but the same principle applies to a power of attorney. I could have it joint, or I could say with independent authority to act. They still have to confer, but you don't have to have both people in the room to do something. Or if the other thing you meant was, can I have multiple beneficiaries? I don't think that's what you meant, but when you're talking about a trust, it's just like a will, guys, where I say I want these people to get my stuff and just the dishes to Polly and the furniture goes to Dan and everything else is split 3 ways. All of that is the way you would design a trust. Great question. Yes, sir. Administrative burden can be as complicated as the assets within it. So let's say you had the trust holding multiple investment accounts, or perhaps you have real estate holdings in there that have to be managed. Of course, that's going to be a higher burden. On the other hand, let's say all I had was my savings. I placed my savings account in there, so I got $100,000 in a CD. What's the maintenance on a CD? I roll it over once a year and it stays there. There is no other burden there except for a required tax filing. And I think those are intimidating to many folks. You're going to file a form called a 1041 on an irrevocable trust. But it really amounts to a 1-page document. You're just principal, how much to grow, what's my expenses, and the net difference. Once you get that mastered the first time, it's fairly small. But what happens on the monthly? Let's say we don't have it in a CD, it's just an account, and I do have some bills to be paid. I can set the trust account just like any other account where it automatically pays those bills for me. Because I hear so many people raise that kind of an issue. My daughter's so busy, I don't want her to have that job as trustee. Set it up the first time and it can run itself except for that tax filing. It does not have to be complicated. Great question.
Most people think that Medicare would provide some long-term care benefit. We learned that it does not. So if I'm trying to get qualified for Medicaid to provide long-term care benefits, and I'm using a trust or changing the verbiage in my will, is there a look-back period for that?
Sounded like you wanted to ask, or
No, I'm sorry.
that's the full question. Okay.
Question mark.
question mark. Yeah, most people, I'll address the assumption that we all face. I think it's a tragic problem with the system. Number one, Medicare and Medicaid are funded by the same payroll deduction. You paid into both. And I say that because there is a bias, and I hold it or held it for a very long time, that I didn't believe in handouts and entitlements. But I sure do believe in collecting my Social Security because I paid into it. You paid into both. It's not even two separate accounts at the federal level. It is one account. It is one agency, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. It's the same money. The thing is that the government did not plan forward. They didn't expect us to live this long. And so they didn't expect the healthcare benefit to be part of it. And when they saw that the healthcare benefit was going to be such a demand, they said, you know what, this is too big for us to manage. Let's let the states take care of half. We'll take care of the other half. We'll give them some federal dollars. We'll make them kick in some state dollars, blah, blah, blah. But it's the same stuff, just divided into two halves. And the part that we all expect, Social Security, Medicare, only pays for 20 days if you had full admission into a hospital for 3 days prior to the entry into the healthcare facility. I love this kind of a history lesson, but I'm running ahead of time, so I'll give you a little bit. I love what President Obama did when he put in the healthcare, the Affordable Care Act. He really tried hard to make sure that we got, I forgot I'm talking in front of doctors. I hate the Affordable Care Act. That thing really made my life, whoo, that was a bad deal. Anyway, we wanted to make sure that the standard of care was being met. If we get rising costs, we need to have good care. I like that idea. So he put some provisions in there for hospitals, and then the hospital said, you know what, we can find a way around it. The provision I'm talking about is if you go to a hospital and receive treatment, and you go home and you have the same issue come up again within 30 days, we're going to put it back on the hospital saying you didn't do your job, and therefore you're not going to get paid twice for the same illness. The hospitals are super smart because they got lawyers that work for them. They said, then we will just take you in an observation status for the first time, and that way if you come back to us, we can admit you the second time, we'll get paid twice anyway. Therefore, what the follow-up addition, an amendment, was that you cannot stay in observation status beyond midnight of the second day. You force full admission. Now, hospitals won't necessarily do that. I have found that the physician, simple call to the physician will straighten out the administration, but the administration is going to do anything they can, usually to save some money, okay? I'm saying that because if you go to the hospital, you want to be admitted. It doesn't sound like observation status is as threatening, so most people will say, okay, I like that, except that you're losing this trigger for the transfer to a facility. So you want full admission. However, if you're never admitted, I'm going straight from home, anything like that, Medicare is going to pay nothing. Okay, Medicare only pays the 20 days. It's a 3-day admitted status precipitating the move to the healthcare facility. Then the other thing that confuses us, this is a long intro to your question. Thanks for being patient. That if you do have a Medicare supplement plan, it will pick up from day 21 through day 100. Affordable Care Act attacks that too, so we got this other little game that gets played where you're not guaranteed your 100 days. Okay? That's another thing people fall trap of. Don't assume the 100 is guaranteed. Certain conditions, since we're talking about myths, if you're in a facility, the facility will start playing another game, and they talk about Medicaid beds. There is no such thing as a Medicaid bed. when a nursing facility opens and gains licensure through Frankfurt for X number of beds in their facility, if they are willing to receive Medicare dollars, they are automatically agreeing to Medicaid dollars for every single bed they have, as long as it's semi-private. But they lie. Okay? Now, to the real question. I forgot what it was. So the other thing that we hear about is this 5-year look-back period. That basically the look-back rule is this. At the time of application for long-term care benefit through Medicaid, the question must be asked, have you given anything away in the past 5 years, except for the state of California, which is only 2.5 years? Every other state is 5 years. Will it change and become 7 or 10 or any other noise like that you hear? No, it won't change. If anything, it's likely to go away within the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm not a prophet. Just think that's where it's headed. I don't think we're going to go longer. Did you give anything away in the past 5 years for less than fair market value? So let's say, yeah, Grandpa gave little Johnny his pickup truck, but he wanted Johnny to have some skin in the game, so Johnny paid $1,500 for that Dodge pickup that we all knew was worth $6,000. So he gave it away for less than fair market value, right? He gave away $4,500 worth of value. Anytime a gift is made like that, notice I said gift, then Medicaid penalizes you for that, and they convert the value to a time factor. I like rounding it off to a monthly amount of $9,000. And so for every $9,000 worth of value, you get penalized 1 month where you're denied coverage for 1 month. Come back to them at the end of the month, now you can get picked up. So my $4,500 gifted truck from Grandpa means how much coverage do I lose? 1/2 month. Well, Scott, I don't have anything. I gave that thing away. I gave that money away. Where am I supposed to find the money to pay for the facility for the loved one? Don't know. Don't care. Go fix it yourself. That's the point of the penalty. And it is meant to discourage people from giving things away simply to qualify. Now, I need to talk about gifting in general because there's a big misunderstanding on what gifting means. But since you're listening, that doesn't mean we don't do this. You just follow rules. There are ways to give things away following the rules where you get a penalty or do not get a penalty. Do it the wrong way, you do get a penalty. This is what I do all day long. People come to me, they did the wrong thing, I have to fix it. So because of this 5-year look back though, people will often, I know I could, on every block I pass by in a lawyer's office, I can tell you that one said this, that one said this, that one said this. They say, go ahead and give the house to the kids. Put the kids' name on the house now. Bad idea. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars of taxes. Do it now before the 5 years. No, don't do it now before the 5 years. Go do it the right way. Find somebody that knows what these rules are. Or they'll say, oh, don't worry about it. It's too late to do anything because you didn't make the 5 years. Ladies, gentlemen, it's never too late. Half of my clients come only after they're in the facility and the administrators say, what? You've not seen an elder law attorney yet? You better go see Scott. He's the most handsome one you'll ever meet. You laugh because you've heard them say it already. Cool. So does that help with the 5 years, 5-year look back? It's a way to get penalized, but there are so many ways around the 5-year look back. To me, it doesn't even exist. I'll find a way around it. I'm coming right to you, but I want to say something about gifting. How many of you know what a gift tax is? So what the gift tax, you just sort of fill in the blank. The gift tax is that it allows me to give away so much money per year without paying tax on it, right? No, that's not what gift tax is. This is another one of those things where lawyers get to talk out of both sides of their mouth. That's what it sounds like, that it won't be taxed, because after all, it's a gift tax. But the rule, 19,000, and it changes usually every year, is a reporting requirement, not a tax amount. So let's say I give away $200,000. Do I get taxed? No. I just am supposed to report it. Cool law. You must report this gift of $200,000. It's rude to point. Sorry about that. What's the penalty if I don't report it? There ain't one. I love the way the government makes rules, man. I wish my parents had made rules like that. Dad did, Mom didn't. She was serious about rules, man. Dad was just, whoo, nothing mattered. That makes me want to tell a story, but I can't. So the reporting requirement, $19,000. That is not what we're talking about here. That's tax law. Tax law, Medicaid law, they don't even talk to each other. Okay? So don't assume because you know something over here that it makes sense over there. Thank you for your patience. Your question.
Yeah, follow-up related, the 5-year look back. What if a year before you need facility care, you dump everything into a trust?
Mm-hmm. So
Is that treated differently?
let me see if I understand. I'm gonna create the scenario as we go so everybody follows. I got $100,000. I create a trust, hoping for 5 years. I make it 4 years, and then all of a sudden the emergency happens and I need facility level care. What happens? The 5 years does not start until I apply for the benefit. So when I get 4 years through this process, if I were to go and apply, then they would look back 5 years and see that 4 years ago I gave something away. The penalty would attach, and then I can serve the penalty if that's the strategy I wanted to do. So $100,000, that means that that's 11 months worth of penalty, roughly. I'm not that good with math off the top of my head, but let's say now I have an 11-month penalty. I can privately pay for 11 months, reapply. I could choose the smarter method in our little scenario. I'm only 12 months from making a full 5 years, just privately pay that way. At the end of 5 years, then I apply and the benefit will kick in. I would do that if it were more than $100,000. Let's say I gave away a $350,000 home. Don't recommend that, but let's say that's what I did, and I know this penalty is going to be longer than my remaining 12 months that I could serve the full 5 years, then I pull the trigger on that. If, on the other hand, I'm getting fancy here, don't try this at home, but I'm trying to illustrate why the 5-year look back doesn't matter. If it was $100,000 and I made it 4 years, I would go ahead and apply, and then I can cut the penalty in half. There's another method. So instead of being 11 months, I'm only going to have to serve 5.5 months. They always round down, so I only have to serve 5. And there's probably some other things I could do to gain some equity. And most likely that 11-month penalty would end up being 2-3 months maximum. And I know that's still a lot to pay for, $27,000, but I just want to show you that there are ways to do it. And usually I would find 3 or 4 or 5 ways, present them to a family, figure out, hey, what's best for you guys.
But does putting assets in a trust count as giving away?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Placing the asset, that's why I said early on, the trust doesn't make you qualified, it just protects the stuff. You still have to face the look back penalties and all of that. So that's the magic of all these other strategies that we put in place. Which is one of the, if you came to the firm, what we would do for you is have a strategy session. We're just going to brainstorm for it takes me about 2 weeks of preparatory work just to get ready for a 2-hour meeting with you so we can roll out 6 or 7 options so the family gets to pick and choose what works best. But generally speaking, even if you were already in a facility, if it's a married couple, I don't care what kind of wealth you have, I'm going to save 100% of it. If it's a single person, most of the time I'll save 70% of it. But the rule is you can't have anything more than $2,000. How can I save everything you have? Let's say you got $300,000. How can I do that if you're only allowed to have 2? Because of other stuff I know that you don't.